And we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let you meet our lovely guests. And if you're watching this, you can see it's Cyberpunk Day. Well, it's going to be because we're airing this in advance or recording it, whatever. I speak, I promise. But so thank you guys all for joining us. I didn't expect so many to say yes. I guess Matt really is very persuasive. I'm absolutely convinced he could convince an Eskimo that he needed to buy more ice. Probably true. Allegedly.
That was my goal. I tricked them into writing stories for an anthology, and now I've tricked them into appearing on a podcast.
All right, so just to keep it simple, we're going to go Brady Bunch style for the Brady Bunch squares. I'm going to start with you, Keith. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Hi, I'm Keith Hedger. I've currently got 4 independent stories out on Amazon. They're available on Amazon in the Burning Bad Karma series, and 2 stories sold to anthologies that are connected to the Burning Bad Karma series. The first book is Moving Target, which is the story of a cyberpunk character who's been crossed over by an employer and is trying to get out in one piece, which got followed up by Sandblaster, which is kind of military sci-fi cyberpunk. Go steal a general in Texas in a combat zone, where we introduce the character Phoebe the Tank along with everything else that went on. And go. I had a lot of fun with these stories, though.
All right. If you're curious, we did interview him. So just type his name into the Wayback Machine over on the Blasters and Blades podcast, and you can listen to that episode. All right. Next, but not least, we got Miss Rachel Beck, the first lady of Cyberpunk, because I gave her the title, so we're sticking with it. Sorry, Miss Lerma. I didn't know about you then. Or you, Rosie. We'll do better. We promise. We'll get you titles, too.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I write the Glitch Logs. We're 3 books in. The Glitch Logs is a cyberpunk book series about a hacker who makes a living stealing from giant corporations who had it coming. One night they're on a job and they run into a rival team of thieves after the same take in the same building, and things devolve from there. Yeah, that's me.
All right. Next, we got Mr. Mark Everglade.
Hi, I'm Mark Everglade. I'm a traditionally published cyberpunk author of 3 novels and numerous short stories featured in various anthologies. In my spare time, I enjoy reviewing cyberpunk literature and interviewing some of the legends in the genre, both classic and modern.
Okay. We don't need to introduce Nick. We've been here before. Next, we got Miss M.F. Lerma.
So my claim to fame is I co-write with Jay and Cheney. I have 5 books, 1 completed series with him, and I just started a new series that is going to be 9 to 12 books long. All military sci-fi, far-flung future space opera style. And yeah, we just released our first book in that series on Sunday, so got a long way to go.
Yay.
Okay. And Cheney's good people. Next, we've got Mr. Matthew A. Goodwin. I'm told the A is very important.
Right. It's the only thing that differentiates me from another author, Matthew Goodwin, who his claim to fame was he had to eat a book on camera after making a bet incorrectly about Brexit or something like that. So he took the name, so I have to be Matthew A. Goodwin. I write a 7-book cyberpunk series called A Cyberpunk Saga. Basically, an everyman who works for an evil mega corporation discovers that they're evil and has to try to take them down. And then hundreds of thousands of pages later or whatever, or hundreds of thousands of words later, really, he, may or may not.
Okay. We've got Miss Rosie Record next.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm kind of the newbie on the scene. I published my first book last year. Cyberpunk dystopian novel about a woman fighting the system in California Next, where a wall has been erected around the new borders of California. And she has to discover if her employer is lying to her and how deep the lies go. It takes her on a fun adventure into underworld and all that good stuff. All that cyberpunk stuff.
Are you in California?
I used to be. Then I moved to New York. Now I'm in Nashville. So, no.
Okay. I'm currently residing in lovely San Diego, where I'm lied to constantly.
San Diego. So I used to be in Temecula, close by.
Temecula, nice.
Where the rest of us will just pretend we know what all that means. And next we'll let Mr. Jim Keane introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I write science fiction as well. I currently have a trilogy out. It's set 40 years time in New York post AI, and it follows the story of Alice Yu, an NYPD cop who gets sucked into a world of post-singularity intrigue and action and adventure. And as you can tell from my accent, I'm British, but I've been living in Brooklyn, New York for nearly 20 years.
We won't hold it against you.
Thank you.
The Brooklyn part, not the British part.
Okay.
We don't care about that.
What a dick.
All right. And so the next
Foreigner.
part is how this first happened. So Matthew was a follower of and listener of the show. So he invited himself on, as you do. And once we interviewed him, he told us about the first Cyberpunk day. And that was last year, I believe, was the first one. Or at least the first one we interviewed you about. Yeah.
Last year was the second
last-
one, but yes, our first collaborative Cyberpunk day.
And so after that panel ended, he somehow convinced me to publish an anthology for him because I had the infrastructure in place from publishing my own anthologies, and the rest is history. So now, why wouldn't we do round two? You guys liked it so much last year. Only I seem to remember less people last time. You must be getting more popular.
Yeah, or I'm just becoming more and more persuasive with every passing day. I just try to find more people to write in this genre. Cyberpunk is a little bit too niche, and I think there's a huge market for it. So hopefully more people who write sci-fi will branch out into cyberpunk. Edge Runners in the last month really proved that people are champing at the bit for more cyberpunk content.
It seems to be growing in popularity from what I noticed. So that's really good. It's niche now, but it's going to go mainstream probably, I would say, in the next 5 years with the amount of people that are writing it.
Well, I think more people are going to know what it is, hopefully. There's like the sort of marquee movies or books in every 10 years. You say The Matrix, you say Ready Player One, you say, Blade Runner. There's sort of
Johnny Mnemonic.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, anything William Gibson, really. And hopefully people will know what that is. But, I would like for it to not be every 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do our part. But before we get started, because this is the Sci-Fi Shenanigans, and we do the religion questions, we're going to start. And you've got, just the first one that comes to the top of your mind, because we want to have more time to talk about the actual Cyberpunk day. But we'll start with you, Keith. Blade Runner, Alita Battle Angel, or Ready Player One?
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to have to go with the classic Blade Runner because I'm old enough that got me part of the way into Cyberpunk. But yeah, there's not a bad choice there.
Okay. What about you, Rachel?
I'd say probably still also Blade Runner of the set. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Mark?
I appreciate the fact that Ready Player One can bring at least some of this perhaps to a new generation, but I got to go with Blade Runner, of course.
Acceptable answer. All right. Nick, we already know your answer. So, Miss Lerma.
No, you got to tell me what my answer is first.
You're old, so you're going to go with Blade Runner because that's what we oldies do, right? You got to go with the original.
I hate that you know me so well.
All right, Miss Lerma. Blade Runner, Alita Battle.
Blade Runner, which is kind of funny because it's part of where the Slip Runner name came from for my new series.
Oh,
okay.
Slip Runner. Yep.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody would be shocked if we said anything other than Blade Runner. For me, it was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was the thing that introduced me to the genre, even though it could be argued tech-noir. Blade Runner, that movie just it changed my life and is the reason I'm sitting here today. So absolutely Blade Runner.
Yeah.
All right,
Chef's
fair. Rosie, Blade Runner, Battle Angel, or Ready Player One?
I gotta say Blade Runner, like everyone else.
All right, Jim, are you going to be the different one?
No, Blade Runner as well. Anything
right,
but Ready Player One.
8 for 8. I love it.
And because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, we've got Elysium, Total Recall, or Ghost in the Shell. We're going to start at the back and work our way up this time. So, Jim.
Total Recall. The first version, obviously, because Arnie is awesome in it.
Okay. Rosie?
Well, that one's hard. I don't know. Elysium?
I liked all of them, so you can't lose on this one. What about you, Matt?
There's no
I
right
think,
or wrong answer.
Ghost in the Shell was pretty formative for me as well. I think Akira edges it a little bit, but Ghost in the Shell of those three. I love Total Recall and Elysium too, but yeah, Ghost in the Shell.
Okay. All right, Miss Lerma.
Definitely Total Recall, because I saw that before Blade Runner, and that was kind of what got me into it.
Okay. Mark, we got Elysium, Total Recall, or Ghost in the Shell?
Yeah, I definitely got to go with Ghost in the Shell. I think philosophically it's a little bit perhaps more interesting. I also think it might hold up to the course of time a little bit better than Total Recall does. Though I appreciate how Total Recall, like Blade Runner, leaves you with these big questions of discussion at the end regarding, was it all virtual, etc. So it's been a lot of fun, all of it.
Okay, Rachel.
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell. All right. And last but not least, Mr. Keith.
I'm going to go with Ghost in the Shell, the original anime. Like the live action, I actually like it for different reasons, but it was a really good movie. But yeah, and I liked all three of them, so not a wrong answer there. So
okay, and then because these are fun and there's so many of you, we're doing it the quick one. We've got The Fifth Element, Watchmen, or Judge Dredd. All right, Keith, we're going to go back from top to bottom this time.
Which Judge Dredd?
Dealer's choice. I didn't specify because I knew there were options.
Ooh.
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban is amazing. I'm going to go with
All
that.
right.
But again, no bad choices, really.
All right, Rachel.
Sorry, run that list again.
So we've got Fifth Element, The Watchmen, or Judge Dredd. Multi-pass.
Fifth Element, I guess. Yeah, let's go with Fifth Element.
It's an excellent choice. All right, Mark. We've got the choices. You got Fifth Element.
Yeah, Fifth Element. It's so eccentric that it really frees the mind as far as creativity goes. You feel like anything is possible creatively after you see it.
All right, what about you, Nick? I don't know what you're going to say on this one, but I'm thinking Judge Dredd.
It's really a toss-up between Watchmen, which is the most accurate comic book adaptation, but I'm going to have to go with Judge Dredd. Carl Urban.
Okay.
Carl Urban, not Stallone. Never Stallone on Judge Dredd. No.
Is Stallone ever the right answer?
He is. Have you seen Samaritan? Expendables, Samaritan, Rocky. I mean, come on. I could spend 2 hours just talking about his list of accomplishments. But Carl Urban in Judge Dredd is probably the most accurate character transfer from page to screen.
So we haven't done any movie reviews of Cyberpunk movies. We'll have to do that as one of our episodes and have some of you guys back on if we can arrange the logistics. All right, Miss Lerma, Fifth Element, The Watchmen, or Judge Dredd?
That one's really tough because I love The Fifth Element. I agree about The Watchmen because, if anybody who read it and watched it, it was perfect. But I love Stallone and Judge Dredd. I watched that movie so many times. It is one of my top favorite movies of all time.
You can't win them all.
Matthew, we've got Fifth Element, Watchmen, or Judge Dredd?
This is really a tough one. Although, frankly, if I was going to do a Stallone Cyberpunk, I would go with Demolition Man. I don't know how other people feel about that movie, but that movie, I just loved it. I like that I'm answering with something that wasn't even on there. I guess I'll go with Fifth Element, but my side answer is actually Demolition Man, which wasn't on the list.
Dude, I agree with you wholeheartedly on Demolition Man. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Love it. I watch it once a year.
Rosie?
Fifth Element, hands down, my favorite movie.
All right, outstanding. And you, Mr. Jim?
Well, seeing as I bought my first Judge Dredd comic when I was 7 years old, I have to go for that. It's a great movie. The Carl Urban one. Anybody who likes the Stallone one is clearly crazy. I don't get it.
I'm insane.
And shots fired across the bow, mate.
Well, I actually did a podcast review of the Stallone Judge Dredd yesterday, and so I had to watch it this weekend, and it just reminded me what an awful movie that is.
I feel no shame. It's okay.
It wouldn't have been
Embrace
bad if
it.
it wasn't
Embrace
tied
the-
to a
embrace the
property.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've got one more because, I wasn't sure how many people we're having if I had time to fill. But RoboCop, The Matrix, or Tron? All right, Jim.
Oh, RoboCop, definitely. Fantastic movie.
You
And
have
very
3
much
seconds
like
to
Judge
comply. Yeah.
All right, Rosie.
Matrix.
Good answer. All right, Matthew.
Yeah, again, tough. Okay, I'm gonna. Matrix is I think my final answer. That one's by a hair, but I loved the Matrix and the world of the Matrix and the Animatrix. Although it's really just the first one. I struggled with pretty much all of the other ones, but it was the first one in the game. I think it was called Enter the Matrix. I played the snot out of that game like all through college. I just love that game. So the Matrix has a special place in my heart.
On my OG Xbox, I did the same. I still have it.
Oh man, I'm coming over.
All right, you're on the same side of the country too. So.
Yeah, San Francisco and San Diego is not that far.
There you go, road trip. All right, Miss Lerma, RoboCop, Matrix, or Tron?
Matrix, no discussion.
All right, Nick, I don't know your answer on this one. I got nothing.
Tron, no cap.
Okay. Mark?
I've been talking to my daughters. They're teenagers, so their vernacular is.
Yeah, I get that. It happens.
For real, no cap, dead ass.
I got to echo the Matrix. Totally got to echo the Matrix on this, especially the first one. So.
Okay. All right, Rachel.
Yeah, Matrix. First one, like the effects hold up for the most part. Like that piece holds together really well, even on a rewatch.
Yeah, and then the other cool thing about The Matrix is it was filmed right before the shift where everything was green screen and the acting, like, who needs to act? We'll just have explosives in the background. So they've got the perfect blend of actual acting and the effects. It's a good choice. All right, Keith, you have to bring it home. This is the last one for the night on these types of questions. RoboCop, The Matrix, or Tron?
I'm going to go with RoboCop, or Matrix, excuse me. But RoboCop is a really close second, the original one. Just because of that line at the end, they'll have families. They always do.
Yes. And so you, dear listener, if you're listening, we're going to be airing this before the Cyberpunk Day that brought these fine people here. But you can weigh in on their live chat when they're doing the things and tell them what you thought the right answer should have been. You could do it when we post it on Facebook or anywhere else you're listening or viewing. Tell us what you would have voted for. That's always a fun conversation. And I'm sure we can get the people to come back and defend their answers if you want to disagree. All right. So the next group of questions is a little bit of get-to-know-you questions that we'll do round robin. So I am going to skip Mr. Keith, Rachel, and Matthew because you've all been here before and answered these. So I will encourage all of you to go back to their various interviews. And for the ones who haven't been here before, this is just for them to get to know you as a nerd. All right. So we here at the Blasters... Yeah, we here at the Blasters and Blades podcast love both the fantastical and the scientific. But what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy? We'll start with Mark.
I mean, it was definitely fantasy with, of course, everybody's going to say Tolkien, etc. But it wasn't long before, Snow Crash came into my, bookshelf and then totally changed my life.
Okay. And Ms. Lerma?
This is a weird answer for me, but it was sci-fi. Because of a middle grade series called Animorphs.
Oh,
I remember those.
I read every single one of those, like every release day, and that was like my foray into science fiction.
Okay.
Well, actually, what was the movie they just remade? The Madeleine L'Engle book.
Oh, Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time. That was the first one I ever read, and I was like in, I don't know, elementary school, so I didn't really understand it, but that was the first one.
Okay. All right, Rosie. So what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Well, books, I'd have to say fantasy, but films, always sci-fi. It was a very close toss-up. Because in school, I always loved science, too. So if I had to pick, I guess sci-fi.
Okay. And Jen?
Sci-fi for me as well. Again, back to Judge Dredd. That was the first thing I bought when I was 7 years old. I got Prog 1 with him in it, of 2000 AD, and I've been reading it ever since.
Okay. So what is it, and we're going to go backwards this time. So what do you love about speculative fiction, that sort of umbrella genre that covers everything? Jim?
Oh, that's a great question. I like the fact that I think science fiction is, for me, it's the one real genre that allows you to kind of look at and think about current society, but with a bit of a remove from it. So I think, for instance, Cyberpunk is, especially in the 70s and 80s, was a really accurate depiction of how corporations were becoming more powerful. So really, you're right about the current current world, but giving it a different point of view. And I think there's no other genre that does that really.
Okay. Rosie, what about you? Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was saying also, I'm just a big fan of gadgets and spaceships and intelligent machines as well. So, you can keep your dwobbits and shiny swords. Give me a robot anytime.
Okay. All right, Rosie, what is it you love about speculative fiction?
Just you can build a world rooted in a reality that is coming in the future. You can see the path forward with if it's steeped in science, and like Jim said, it's a great backdrop for kind of discussing like current day events and current day human traits that could be morphed into something really sinister and dark in the future, and let the reader kind of consider where they are right now and how they can be better and how society can be better.
Okay. So just before we keep going, I'll clarify. Speculative fiction is what I said, not science fiction, which includes sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and anything that isn't basically fiction. But we'll let your answer stand. Miss Lerma, what is it you love about speculative fiction as a genre?
So I'm sure plenty of us here are fans of Black Mirror and like the darker aspects of how we push the human boundaries, and that's what really got me into writing spec fic was the Black Mirror shit. And I'm sorry, I don't know if we can curse, but I don't know. I just like seeing how dark we can get and the things that we'll do to ourselves to get ahead, and then rooting that in what's actually plausible. So I don't know. I like doing that.
Okay, and Mark?
I mean, it's really speculative fiction is a blank slate that you can see how different societies might come about, how they might work and function, what the challenges of different societies, either in different planets or realities or realms, might be. So you can explore what's possible in this world as far as the different modes of social organization. Aldous Huxley's Island is a great example of that.
Okay, and next we have, what is it? How did your love of speculative fiction as a genre transition from, hey, I want to read and watch and do all the things, to I want to write my own stories in this space? So we'll go with you, Mark, first.
How I transitioned to writing stories. Basically, yeah, when you read things like Snow Crash, by Stevenson, and you've got Sumerian mythology and neurolinguistics and virtual reality sword fights, and somehow it's all put together into one. You can't help but be inspired. Like, wow, I can combine everything I've ever known or everything I've ever studied into one genre, and it can fit into this loose box that we call cyberpunk. Which is just a playground, and the virtual realm itself is a playground for your imagination where you can do pretty much anything.
Okay, Miss Lerma.
Yeah, like Mark said, virtual reality it's a great playground, and I am a little bit of a junkie when it comes to that stuff. And everything that I've ever seen or read didn't quite touch on it the way that I would have liked to see envisioned. So it was kind of like a fan fiction of all the aspects that I didn't get to see explored, so I wanted to write it myself.
Okay, Rosie.
I've always wanted to be a writer since I was a little girl, and when I finally committed to writing my first book, it was because I had I wanted to explain what was everything that was going on in my mind, like what I saw happening around me in society and politics, and I wanted to be able to voice it in a way that could be meaningful for future generations, and have people kind of read something more metaphorical but apply it to their lives in a more concrete way. And I think that all fiction, all writing has that power, and I guess for me it's a little bit of legacy. Like, I wanted that to be a legacy. I wanted to be able to contribute to people's outlooks on themselves, on society, on the future.
Okay. All right, Jim. What about you? How did you transition to the writing world?
Well, I mean, I was really lucky that some people here might know, I spent 20 years as an architect, and in that career, I did a lot of design competitions where you would really get to push like modern design and really high-tech futurist design. And I was doing all this design work at the same time as watching Blade Runner and reading Snow Crash and all that sort of stuff. And so I just started to have the ideas for what would happen inside the designs of the buildings. And so I started off doing some short stories to do with the buildings I was designing, and then they got longer and longer and longer until it became a novel, and that was the first one I published.
You're like
Okay, that is
Tolkien, but for sci-fi.
Okay, well, that's some lofty comparisons. So many authors will let their own real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So, were there any formidable moments that shape you as a storyteller? We'll start with you, Mark.
It's difficult to say the way that the unconscious really comes out into everything. People ask, as an author, are you every single character that you write? Just like if you have a dream, are you every character in your dream? You are the dreamer, and so it's difficult to say. I don't believe I have anything from my real life that filters into the stories, but I think it would be impossible to be a human being and not, absorb through osmosis every experience you've ever had in life. Not to mention standing on the shoulders of the giants of everything you've read in the past.
Okay, that is a good answer. So, Miss Lerma?
Yeah, but not so much in like the science fiction or the speculative fiction aspects. It's darker things that, I've experienced or been through or has touched me in some way. Always makes it into the books somehow, to the point that, apparently I take it too far, because I've had readers message me and ask me, like, have you ever been kidnapped or tortured? Because those were very realistic. And I was like, no. I was, not sadly, but, but I think that, we embellish some of those things, and we as writers take those dark experiences and then write them in a way that kind of is cathartic, and it just comes out that way.
Okay. Jim?
I was working in a corporate office in Midtown Manhattan, wearing a suit and a tie and really hating my job, and got into a stand-up argument with the chairman of the board, and I told him to fuck off. And he called security, and I was escorted from the building and had my phone taken away, and I was dumped out on the sidewalk, and it was a boiling hot June. And that became the inciting incident for the bad guy in my book. I literally went home and wrote that scene, but from his point of view, what the pleasure he got from kicking somebody out of a job. So that was my starting point.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
I like it.
I like it.
That's real.
Yeah.
And it's practical.
And that's as cyberpunk as it
people
gets.
can agree with. Yeah.
Being replaced by a machine is cyberpunk as it gets. You're right.
Right.
So let's transition from the writing side and talk about things from a fan angle. So rather than break down all the questions, what are some of your milestones regarding your interaction with your fans since you started writing, Mark?
The milestones as far as the interactions go, Cyberpunk there was a major milestone. I know we'll be talking about that probably a little bit more later. But also, at first you're soliciting the attention of the world, and eventually when people are writing, putting together different publications, and they're coming to you for your opinions instead of you reaching out to them. I guess that's kind of not the most romantic answer, but business wise, I guess it's an honest answer.
Okay. Ms. Lerma?
Ooh, I think it was like, I don't, I'm constantly with the imposter syndrome, thinking I'm a trash writer and nothing that I do is great or anything. And then I think it was one of the 20 books conferences where, I think it was my first one actually, because I'd never been there before, and people were coming up to me and you're like, oh, you're Molly, you write with Jay and Cheney. And they're like, oh, you do the fifth column. And, I didn't know people knew who I was. So that was kind of like a big moment for me. And then, I don't know, people kind of wanting to reach out and talk privately, just because they're a fan is kind of like a big deal to me too. So those are the kind of things that kind of have been turning points for me. And every good review, because I'm always like, oh my gosh, somebody liked it. Amazing.
Reviews do matter. So what about you, Rosie? What was, do you have any milestones, like first autograph, first, fan recognition? Like what is it for you?
Not yet. I guess kind of a silly answer. The biggest milestone is I submitted the book to Writer's Digest, some competition, and didn't win, but one of the judges actually commented very positively and said that the book was actually funny. That's one thing. Like, I always think I'm hilarious, and and people are not necessarily onto my humor. So it was great to have a judge say, no, she's funny.
Okay, that's a win. Jim, what about you?
I mean, personally, finishing the trilogy was a really big thing for me because I'd spent so long working on it. So I felt that was really great. And then getting feedback from people who read the books is always a wonderful thing. So, I mean, I struggle with imposter syndrome as well. And I always think, whenever I finish anything, all I can see is the faults in it, not necessarily the bits that people like. So when people write to me and say how much they enjoyed it, it always, makes me feel great. I feel very fortunate to be in this position.
Okay, so normally we would pause right now and we would put a mark in here for the commercial, but since we are being sponsored graciously by Bayonet Books on Deadly Enhancements Anthology, and some of the writers are right here, I will throw a link to it. It's a Cyberpunk Day and themed anthology that Matthew broke my arm and said you will publish this, so we did. But thank you to myself for hosting this one, and we'll dive right in. So first, we're going to talk about, let me show this logo. It was glorious. We'll show it one more time. Cyberpunk Day. So what is Cyberpunk Day? And this is sort of anyone can chime in for those who weren't here last year. Got to remember to unmute. That helps.
Cyberpunk Day is a celebration of the genre by fans for fans. There you go. That's my soundbite.
All right. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree that it's definitely an opportunity to take a variety of media developers and, whether they're doing books, video game development, tabletop RPG, and likewise the fans and all these disparate communities that, may be pariahs to some degree, or they may be very independent people. They may not always be people who want to interact with others or seek out others beyond the screen. And, build a community, build a sense of belonging for them, connecting them to the media creators, and more importantly, connecting them to other fans who share this very esoteric niche passion so that they can then, share their interest with the world and feel a sense of belonging.
Okay. So I don't know how many of you were involved in year one, but how did Cyberpunk Day come about?
Well, so I guess I should take this one. I may have answered this last year, but it's a fun story, so I'll tell it again. I was still working at the zoo at the time, and I saw that it was National Denim Day. Somebody had pointed it out, and I thought, all right, if denim can have its own day, then something that I love as much as Cyberpunk deserves its own day. And I looked, and of course, there was no Cyberpunk Day, and I asked a few people really in the inception, and one of the people was Mark here. I was one of the first people I reached out to say, hey, would this be a thing that anybody would have any interest in? And the first year we did everything live, and it was the exact first year story that you think of. It kind of felt like everything was put together and then fell apart, but it still looked good and was a good foundation. And then last year, it really became something much bigger. We started working last year, especially with Artel Saurian Games, who created the Cyberpunk tabletop series and Cyberpunk 2077. And Mike Pondsmith was kind enough to come on, and there was a Cyberpunk Red actual play. And so we really got a big day last year, and then we're hoping for another really huge day this year. Of course, many of the people who are on here are also involved, particularly Rachel and Mark, who have been super instrumental in putting everything together. Jim also offered up some art for this year, so you'll be able to see some new art from Jim. And then, of course, these other guys who are on here are in the anthology, which if you're joining us for Cyberpunk Day, you should also go check out Deadly Enhancements with stories from these guys too.
Okay. So what is it you think that makes Cyberpunk appealing? And Nick, you can answer even though you're not one of the authors involved in this, because I know you're like an uber Cyberpunk fan. So this is sort of open for everybody. But what is it you guys that draws you to Cyberpunk as a genre?
It feels honest. Is I think kind of where I start. So I got into Cyberpunk when I was also working a corporate job. I didn't swear at my boss and get fired, but it was like I contemplated, jumping off a bridge on my lunch break, and then I thought, how sad is it that I'm trying to schedule this? That's not great. Like, I need to reprioritize here. And Cyberpunk felt honest because it was clear that, like, no, the business cares about one thing, it's bottom line. And you're a cog in that machine. And so it was like having an honest discussion about not just, late stage capitalism, but also like the way that technology, which could be this amazing tool to make people's lives better, is instead used as a tool for control in so many ways. And it was an honest discussion about like what makes a person. And it was an honest discussion about just so many of these hard topics that were like often sort of glazed over. And it helped sort of, in a sense, it helped me make sense of my current experience, in a cubicle, working in marketing of all things, and to be like, oh, okay, like I have a genre that helps me interpret what's happening around me and both understand what I'm fighting and also, like, in a sense, see the sort of like romance is maybe not the right word, but I'm going to use it. But the romance of like, yeah, like I'm sitting here stuck in traffic on the 5 in LA. And the sun's coming up over this desert concrete hellscape. And like, that's my life. But there's also a moment there that I can appreciate and be like, yeah, I know where I fit in this world. And I know like who and what I'm fighting. And there's like a deep goodness to that.
So did you ever figure out what it means to be human? Did you come to the conclusion yet, or are you still working on it?
I mean, the answer I posited in the anthology, among other things, is that one of the things that make us human is we're so damn petty.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I would imagine most of us would agree with that. But what for everyone else? What is it about Cyberpunk that draws you in? Feel free to chime in.
I've always what I think things I really like about it is it feels near future to me. It's less of the. I mean, I love space opera and Ian Banks and ships that have warp drives and Star Trek and stuff, but Cyberpunk feels to me like it's just about to happen. And so it feels something it's science fiction, but it feels more relevant to my day-to-day life. And again, being on a car watching the sun come up, or being on the subway in New York, not wanting to go to my job, and just thinking like how easy it would be for something like the Matrix to happen, or Neuromancer to happen, or The Peripheral, which now is like the TV show. I feel like Cyberpunk is more a prediction of the future that I could see happening than a lot of other genres.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but all right.
Just a thing.
I would love to go to work virtually.
I don't know how you do the Border Patrol thing virtually, but I mean, I guess become a drone.
Yeah. That a drone could definitely do my job.
I'll say that.
Oh yeah, I would love nothing more than to just chill out somewhere around Galveston in the Gulf of Mexico and drink Mai Tais and let my brain, while I'm focused on the beach, let my part of my brain do the job, because it's not I wouldn't say it's a hard job, it's a physically demanding job, and I don't want to do it anymore because my body hurts, so I need cybernetic augmentation.
Okay.
The thing for me, having started really reading it back with Gibson and Neuromancer and the Sprawl trilogy and up through Snow Crash and all that, is, yeah, like Jim said, that seems like it's right around the corner. I try to place my stuff like 20, 30 years out where there's enough time for this tech to get there. Yeah. And like I said, I've got a family member who's going through a pretty serious health issue. And when the doctor's like, if it was 20 years from now, we would just print you a kidney. And you're going, wow.
And here we are with printing parts. You know?
We're right on the edge of that being workable.
But I mean, that's certain technology. They always say it's 20 more years we're there. I've heard that for the last 40 years about cold fusion being in 20 years. So sometimes those bars just keep moving.
Yeah, but I can play in the highest you can sit, if you're writing Cyberpunk, you can get to the highest corporate or government places. You can play down in the streets and the gutters. You can find people who are specialists, so they're living what would be a decent life, but what they're doing to live that decent life and not, end up crushed under somebody's heel for it is real questionable. So you can have a lot of fun with that. Moral questions, ethical questions. What's the right or wrong use of this? What's the right or wrong place of government, corporation, people? What is it to be human when you start modifying your body to that extent? Because
well, it's not just even that it's 20 years down the line. Now it's Cyberpunk is now. And I think that's part of the reason that it is so vital is that it doesn't even have to be near future. So much of the things that were predictive in the 80s are now. I mean, there are 5 companies that pretty much rule everything. You know, we do have akin to virtual escapism in such a real way. All of these things that seemed like science fiction. This call is science fiction 10, 20 years ago. I mean, you know, the things that were cyberpunk are now. And it's still, of course, fun to play the tape forward and say, well, what does it look like when you can print a kidney? What does it look like when cars fly for no reason other than that it's fucking cool? You know, I think that's part of why cyberpunk is so vital and, you know, still like has a great future because we can still predict these things out always for the next 20 years.
Okay. So do you think that cyberpunk is specifically one genre versus another, one medium? So, you know, we all are here, with the exception of Nick, we write the words. Some people draw the pictures. Now, let me hear your comic book.
Okay, don't tear down my art, okay?
I'm not. I'm just saying it's a different medium.
I wrote those first 7 issues of Phantom Hawk, which now I'm realizing is actually a cyberpunk book, besides a superhero.
No, I just mean the medium is different.
I paid more money than you.
Maybe. But no, the point was just that the mediums are different. Do you think cyberpunk...
On the book, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Do you think cyberpunk works better in some mediums than other comics and graphic novels versus television versus written word, short story versus long format? Like, do you think it lends itself to one medium versus another?
No, I think the storytelling. I think the storytelling style has to change a little bit, but I think cyberpunk works in every medium I've seen it in. We were talking about movies earlier. We've talked about books. There are cyberpunk comic books that work incredibly well in the genre.
And if you're listening and not watching, everybody in the panel was nodding their head right along with him. So we will accept that as confirmation and move on.
I said something right.
Yeah,
mark your calendars.
Here's the
you get a free comic book.
Thank you.
You're talking in terms of medium, but I would argue that cyberpunk also meets and mixes and matches with other genres extraordinarily well. Like cyberpunk and horror are they're buddies, right? Like especially if you get into like body horror, things like that. You want to talk like I argue that cyberpunk is a different take in a lot of ways on the superhero question. What do you do with power? Right. Okay. We get augmented super speed with like limbs or, you know, magic fairy dust or whatever, but you've got, you know, your laser vision, you've got your x-ray vision, you've got, you know, all these things. Like we've come at them from a different angle, but essentially it deals with many of the same skill sets, but it says like, hey, what if people didn't get power and think, wow, with great power comes great responsibility? What if they thought, wow, with great power comes a great profit line?
Yeah.
Right. Like it's
which seems to be the case most of the time.
Yeah.
Right. We advance in technology. Yeah. So it's definitely grounded in reality, but it's also fantastical and futuristic at the same time.
Yeah.
You'll see.
And I'm very new to cyberpunk, in the last 5 years, and I've enjoyed everything that I've seen about, at least in the comic book realm, and that seems to be the line. You know,
but after Gibson and Sterling and Neil Stephenson started getting noticed, you started seeing like science fiction, space opera, military sci-fi, where characters were getting implanted in limb replacements and the cyberware elements. And cyberpunk is kind of tied to everything because, like I said, with my stories, they all end up being cyberpunk something. Cyberpunk thriller, cyberpunk action adventure, cyberpunk mil sci-fi. I end up with another genre in there, but the characters are formatted as they're primarily cyberpunk characters. They're just trying to make a living and get a job done.
Don't you think, though, that cyberpunk, I would say that if you asked, however many people you asked, 90% of them would say cyberpunk is neon lights and rainy streets and a lone cop. I do think it's become a real cliche in manga and cinema.
Yeah,
in many
it's
ways,
kind
and
of
I think the people you're talking about, like Sterling and and Gibson and Stevenson, those books are amazing, but I don't know how many people have heard of Snow Crash that aren't really into the genre. Whereas something like was it what was the one? Was it called? What's the one on Netflix, Matt? Kite Runner?
Altered Carbon?
No, the manga, the one that's just been out.
Oh, Edge Runners.
Cyberpunk
Edge Runners. I mean, it's like, that's your Uber current cyberpunk, isn't it? So Netflix, in that it's going to boil down to this essence, but it's really not much more modern than Akira, which is like 30 years old.
Yeah. And Amazon's got a new series called The Peripheral, which is based on a William Gibson series coming out.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's actually really
far
interesting.
from here. So.
I agree. Like, I think Keith, I think The Peripheral is absolutely cyberpunk.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think many people would recognize it as such these days.
So,
well, I think that's one of the interesting things about the genre in general is that when you talk to people who are creatives in cyberpunk, I think if you asked 5 different cyberpunk creators what is cyberpunk, you might get 5 different answers. And it's sort of, Keith, what you were saying earlier is it sort of works with all these different things and takes on the attributes of these different things also. It's hard to nail down, especially for somebody who's created a day after the thing. And even my books are called not cyberpunk, even though I feel like I hit as many of the tropes as is humanly possible. And there's a lot of just different interpretations of what that word means for different people.
I guess I don't know how useful the question, what is cyberpunk, is, so much as the question, what in cyberpunk speaks to you? Because people can look at the same genre and take like lots of different things out of it. I think it's reductive, though, to say that the things that speak to me in cyberpunk are the only things that define the genre, right? And then also to make the distinction between the aesthetic of cyberpunk, which, Jim, you're speaking about, like the lights and the rain and the cop turning up his collar, and it's always night for some reason. It's great. I love it. It's amazing. But like there's a distinction there to be made between like the aesthetics of the piece, the bisexual lighting, and the themes and the sort of origins of like the punk movement as a whole, and then cyberpunk specifically as a subgenre of that movement.
So when you talk about the
go ahead.
I was saying what you were describing as the lighting and the lone cop, to me that sounds more noir than cyberpunk,
which also has strong origins, which is also why Batman Beyond works so well, because it was cyberpunk and noir and superheroes all in the same genre and like all crushed together in the same piece, and that's like the intersection of those 3.
Like my 3 favorite genres were mixed into Batman Beyond.
We're talking about this anthology. My short story in this anthology is just one long love letter to the noir genre, and everything is contributed to cyberpunk. Like the 2 are deeply intertwined.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now,
absolutely.
Ms. Lerma, you were about to say something. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Mark.
Oh no, I agree entirely.
Sorry.
I was going to try to see what Ms. Lerma was going to say.
Well, I was going to say that cyberpunk, like any subgenre or genre, is a collection of elements. And once you start taking pieces out, that's when you find out, whether it is or isn't, in my opinion, because there's the aesthetic, there's like the corporation aspect, there's like the seedy grittiness that you get, the clear umbrellas, there's like just a certain, like every time you take a piece out of, a story, like, and you start losing an element that might make it cyberpunk or not, like eventually you're going to get to a point where, okay, it doesn't have any of these elements. So it's just sci-fi, or it's just space opera, or it's just superhero or whatever, because like Rachel was saying about the superhero thing, it's just superhero with like a plausible reality, like that makes it possible for a reader. So I just look at it that way, as a collection of elements, and you have to have some of them, because if you take them all out, it's no longer cyberpunk.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have to have all of the tropes; it just needs some of the tropes, and you can.
Well, I mean, that's a good segue. I mean, what tropes make cyberpunk cyberpunk? Like, what benchmarks do you have to like click off to make it to differentiate from like fantasy or the other type of genres here? Like, for everyone that's listening that wants to get into writing cyberpunk stuff, like what things do you think that they need to include? What makes cyberpunk?
I think that transhumanism and that adapting or modifying or implanting my body with new technology, whether it's cyberware or bioware or nanotech implants or whatever, is got to be a part of it.
1,000.
I think noir is tied to cyberpunk because it's always been kind of a gritty in the streets. It's a rainy night in the streets, and you're getting food from a questionable food stand, kind of a feel. That's been from the start, really.
Like a Soylent Green type aspect, maybe.
Yeah, kind of when you're watching Blade Runner and you see Decker stop to get food at one of the carts, and you're going, okay.
Yeah. Would I eat that? Probably, because if it smells good, I'm probably going to eat it.
But Gibson
did that in Demolition.
Gibson had that noir feel. Neil Stevenson kind of took that noir feel and cranked it to 11, I think, with Snow Crash.
They did that in Demolition Man, where he gets the burger, and his partner was like, "Do you see any cows running around?" And he realizes he's eating a rat.
The rat.
I mean, but if it's a choice between Taco Bell and a rat, I probably might choose the rat. I don't know. I mean, in all fairness.
Although the one I laughed about was Taco Bell won the fast food wars.
I want a movie on that, to be honest with you.
I just want to see how that even happened. That had to be Cyberpunk, man.
I want to know about those 3 dang seashells. Like, how does that work? I'm still trying to figure that one out. I don't know who came up with that, but that was gold right there. I just wish I thought of it myself.
They're like, oh, the 3 seashells. All right, cool, makes sense. And like, it was years later until anyone was like, man, what the hell are 3 seashells?
That's the epitome of hand waving right there.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. And then the audience just accepted. They're like, oh, it's 3 seashells.
I am so happy that this conversation has turned entirely into just a chat about Demolition Man. This group needs to come together and just do a Demolition Man episode. I think is what I'm starting to hear.
All right, we'll do a review. I'll pencil it in. We will do a review on Demolition Man after you guys have finished all of your shenanigans with the Cyberpunk day, because I know there's a lot of.
Oh yeah, we haven't done retro reviews in a long time.
Demolition Man is the
that.
best Judge Dredd movie Stallone was ever in.
So
I'm with you, Jim.
So we mentioned the AI, and we talked about how some of the cybernetics and stuff are here now. So I don't know if you guys were following when Elon Musk used to wire mesh to control a pig. It happened when everyone was on lockdown. Was that something you guys followed and paid attention to then?
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah.
So is that something that you see now that it is happening for real, that they're going to have to take to the next level when they incorporate it into a cyberpunk story to make it have that future feel?
Yeah, and there's been elements of that. Snow Crash comes up with the rocket dog. I love that dog. On the other hand, I also liked Uncle Enzo, so take it for what it's worth. But yeah, cyber implanting animals, all that stuff is going to be kind of part of the genre. I've got plans for that. And AI. Speaking about things that happened in real life that were kind of formative for stories, I was in a meeting and our finance person was incredibly excited because she got hold of a human at PayPal.
I didn't know they had that.
Brilliant.
Are you sure it wasn't just an efficient bot?
It might have been. I'm not going to ask, but I eventually ended up writing a story about the only human working at PayPal, and in my cyberpunk setting, Elon Musk is actually an AI.
I believe it.
Well, we are in a simulation anyway.
Well, fair enough.
Do you think cyberpunk needs to be dystopian to beat cyberpunk? I mean, is there cyberpunk that exists in kind of like almost the perfect utopian world? And of course, you're going to dig deeper and find out that it's not. But
yeah, I think that's where you end up with that. But I mean, in my settings, instead of the megacorps, the 5 megacorps being the big bad guys, it's mostly governments are the biggest problem most people have.
Yeah, that's
probably just took every government and cranked it to 11 and let it roll. So now, are corporations sometimes good guys, sometimes bad guys? Yeah, but they don't throw the kind of money a government, even a small nation, can throw.
No, of course not. Corporations make way more.
Can.
Looking at the idea of implants, if I may, regarding the implants, the implants is really fulfilling the postmodern promise that cyberpunk has made as a postmodern genre. Yes, it's noir, but it's also within a postmodern context of deconstructing the self and looking at the commodification of the self. How is the self becoming commodified under late stage capitalism? And in essence, it's doing this. It's not taking a liberal or conservative stance. It's just looking at how we become as the proletariat commodified. And nowhere is that more clear. Is that trope better played out than in RoboCop, where RoboCop is, as scholar Dr. Hirchin says, RoboCop is the product, but he's also the consumer of the product. It is the person becoming a product that is going to be marketed. Just like Facebook markets our data, we are the product that they are selling. And, when you can make that connection, Cyberpunk works great. Unfortunately, what I mostly see is that cyber aesthetic, but it's missing the punk element. The big corporations and the big publishers are not going to publish true punk stuff. It's too radical and too oppositional to the status quo. And that's why we rely on the indie community, like many of the authors that you see on this call, to put forth that kind of true message beyond the neon light aesthetic.
See, this is why Matthew brought you on, to make the rest of us sound smarter by being on the same panel. We will take that answer.
You need to be on all the panels he's on.
I didn't even have to roll for initiative to gain 3+ intelligence from that speech.
Why are you trying to start a fight, Nick?
Because that's what I do.
Right.
That's why they brought me on here.
Fair enough.
Mark makes I more smarter.
I know
So
we've talked.
So, we've talked about cybernetics is one of the common, if not a common trope, but it's a common reoccurring theme in cyberpunk. So this is more of a personal question for all of you. But if you got the opportunity to take those implants, assuming you're not the first test dummy, would you guys do it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
No.
That's
No,
because
yeah,
you're
yeah,
young,
my-
Rachel. Your body doesn't hurt when you bend over. When you get to my advanced stage, like my arms hurt, my back hurts, my head hurts, my feet hurt.
Look,
Put my head in the jam jar and be done with
I
it.
work in software, and if you think it's annoying to get a song stuck in your head now, wait until it's a bug.
Oh, I'm in IT, so I totally get that part. But the other end is I'm also 53 and just ran a marathon, and yeah, my low back hurts most of the time.
Yeah.
That's my first implant, is the lower back implant.
Yep, same.
The one that
I'm
just
gonna go
fixes
for the
that.
eye, because
I want the eyes and the smart gun link, but
I have negative 525 vision, which is if you do that with 20/20, it's negative 400. So what you guys can see at 20 feet, it looks 400 feet away to me.
I'm negative
It's really bad. So I'm legally blind. So if you don't think I'm taking free eyes, yeah.
You got nothing coming, buddy. Remember's getting them eyeballs with X-ray vision, night vision, infrared vision.
See, now I'm picturing the
QR
eyeball,
code reader.
It came from a person that was really bad or something, and now she's seeing all of his crimes or her crimes because she's got his eyes now. I'm just going straight to horror. So I see it now, Rachel.
Yeah, there's the genre crossover right there. Write that down.
Yeah,
that's right.
JR, there's your story for the next anthology.
I thought about writing one. I'm like, I don't read enough cyberpunk to really know what the hell I'm writing.
No,
but maybe I'll play it in advance.
But you live in America, so.
But
that one hurts, Rachel. That one hurts.
But it's one of the things, like Mark was saying. One of my characters, the blurb on the book is she took the job because it paid for her next round of implants, which means she's more marketable.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
there are some industries that are already there.
Nick's in a field where if he could get the cyber implants, he could do that forever and not have to
the
worry
eyes, the back, the hips.
The
legs. I mean, everything from about the heart down. We're good.
No, my neck, my back.
Okay, so there's going to be a little spot placement here and there, but yeah. Being able to run.
That though, once you start installing, we're getting into it here, but once you start installing that, one of the things that Cyberpunk warns us about is that will be used for control, right? And how are you going to do at your job? We already have the problem where managers with nothing better to do with their lives are sitting there being like, did so and so move their mouse every 6 seconds, or whatever the metric is. Imagine when that's embedded in you. Like, it's like,
yeah,
what
that also that creates an underground network, which is essentially just a lower grade, non-profitable corporation. But you start installing VPN type technology into your cybernetics, so I'm blocked.
It's an arms race. Yeah.
Now it's an arms race. So they're going to create better methods of control, while the guys that are underground, like, how do we beat that? It's just, and you're just
how do I make it look?
And that's the punks. That's what we're brainstorming right here.
And then the punk goes,
I'm an old school
I just
punk,
make it.
Like, as far as
I just
music, so the genre makes sense.
Yeah.
The punk just
sets up.
Yeah, the punk just sets up code in the implant that tells it, I did this every 6 seconds.
Rosie, you
forget, like, if you don't pay for your implants on time, they're gonna come repo them or shut them
Repo
down.
Man.
Yeah, now you start getting into the cybernetic opera, Repo Man, which is a great movie, the original and the remakes of it.
So cyberpunk.
Oh, dude.
So Rosie, you've been a little bit quiet
for a long time.
Yeah,
there are a lot of big personalities on this episode, as you can hear, and some of us have louder voices, and you've been awful quiet. So do you have anything you wanted to weigh in?
You guys have been covering a lot of ground. I don't know.
I know, like
sorry.
Something specific? I got lots of thoughts.
Okay, so first off, if you could get the cybernetic implants, would you take them?
No, I am an analog girl. I actually just got a smart lock installed on my front door. My apartment building did it. And I was like, what happens if the batteries run out? There's no way for me to get inside my house. So just the idea of having that embedded in your body, this is a violation. You have to think, what if an upgrade goes through and now you have a glitch? And I'm not a fan of that inside my body. And actually my main character in my book, she's also very against it, but it's like that concept of fighting the future, and everybody sees the potential, but only a few people see like the potential problems. I like that. I like that dichotomy.
Do you worry about the Gattaca type situation where it sets the analogs up at a disadvantage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That I feel like we are naturally going to go that direction when the technology comes to that. And the people who abstain, for whatever religious reasons or ethical reasons, and they don't have that in them, they're totally going to be pitted against the people with implants, and the people with implants are always going to be found superior.
Well, Altered Carbon is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You realize you've just described the Luddite movement from the Middle Ages that were against the technology. So you think that you envision that happening again, that kind of protest against the status quo improvement is going to happen?
Yeah,
improvement in air quotes, obviously.
I do think so. I think if the future has it like Gattaca, where everybody's just like done up, everybody has upgrades, it's going to become a socioeconomic issue as well. Because those who are going to be able to afford the best upgrades are going to be the best. So then you're going to have the super wealthy, the elites, always being a little bit to Elysium, right? It kind of has that whole socioeconomic battle. The super elites up in their whatever their floating islands are, and never aging and always having the best of the best. Well, the people who are struggling to just put food on the table are not going to have these incredible upgrades, and their life is going to reflect that. So you'll have this big stratum, like big gaps. So I guess a Luddite, that's what I am. I'm a Luddite.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. All right, so we've talked about the genres of cyberpunk, and there's lots of fun discussions that can individually be pieced apart to make our own fireside chat episode. And so Matt, I'm going to coordinate with you, and we're going to do some of those just because it would be fun, and we'll have some of you back. I think 9 on a panel was a little much for everyone to get a say, so we'll mix and match. But we came here to talk about Cyberpunk Day. So I'm going to let you direct this for a little bit, Matt. But what is Cyberpunk Day 2022? What can we expect? What's going to be happening? This is airing on Thursday, and they have till Saturday to mark their calendars and be there. So
Sweet. Well, the first thing I will direct you to do is go to cyberpunkday.com and you can check out the lineup, what we're going to have this year. We still got a bunch of content rolling in, but we have a bunch of really exciting content already in the can. So we're pretty excited about what we're going to have this year. So for a start, we have well, it's not going to be a movie premiere, but we have an announcement from a filmmaker, and then we're going to be broadcasting Venus again because Andrew McGee, who made a Cyberpunk movie, has graciously allowed us to show it again. It has blown up since last year, so anybody who tunes in should definitely try to be sure to check that out. We have a cosplay tutorial for people who are maybe aspiring Cyberpunk cosplayers. We have a developers panel, which I can let Rachel talk a bit more about. And then towards the end of the night, I was lucky enough to, me with trying to trick people into talking to me. I got the voice of Adam Jensen himself from the Deus Ex series, Elias Tufexis, to come on and chat with me for, I said we scheduled it. I said, I don't want to take up more than a half hour of your time. We ended up shooting the breeze for over an hour, I think, when it's edited down. So it's really fun to hear him talk about the cyberpunk genre. One of the things that you guys were talking about earlier was what medium works best with cyberpunk. And I think one thing that wasn't mentioned, but I love, is video games and cyberpunk are just the best of friends. Once again, everybody's nodding. It's just cyberpunk video games, and especially Deus Ex, is just some of the best cyberpunk storytelling for my money. So it was a real pleasure to chat with him. And then, Rachel, did you want to talk about some of the other stuff we got going on?
Oh boy, let's see. We've got a great game devs panel where we've got game designers from both tabletop games and from video games sitting down having a chat together. We've got Hex Comics was kind enough to sit down and talk to us about their cyberpunk Hex 11 comic. Let's see, what else do we have going on? We've got a couple of really cool art pieces coming in that are I'm very excited for them. They have that wonderful street level energy to them of no corporation would ever publish this, and it's amazing. A couple of those pieces came through. What else do we have? I have to go look at the list. You can go look at, like Matt was saying, cyberpunkday.com to see everything that you should get excited about.
Okay. So are all of you panelists going to be participating in the Cyberpunk Day this year? Yeah, everyone's nodding. Okay.
Well, I'm going to be attending, I guess.
I'd like to attend.
I think it's all virtual, but at some point in time, it'll be virtual reality or maybe in real life. Matt, is there any plans for that?
So we had actually even discussed trying to move into the real world this year. It didn't quite happen. I think we're going to, if I've learned anything from this year, it's that we're probably going to need a little bit more manpower if we're going to get Cyberpunk Day 2023-24, something like that, into the real world. The thing about Cyberpunk Day is it is just a labor of love by a bunch of people who just friggin' love this genre and want to share it with other people who either love it or want to know more about it. I mean, one thing that I wanted to be sure I mentioned was that Cyberpunk Day, you don't have to already love Cyberpunk to enjoy the content here. I actually think that it's just as good for people who have heard the word and want to try it out, or don't feel like they could write a cyberpunk story but want to maybe give it a shot and spend a day just sitting around and enjoying some great science fiction content. That's really what Cyberpunk Day is. But the reality is it's just a handful of people who are just busting their ass trying to make this thing come together. So I would love to make Cyberpunk Day a real physical reality. I think, I live in a place in San Francisco where high-tech, low-life, the words that you hear when you think of cyberpunk could not be more embodied when you see just, a homeless encampment at the bottom of the Twitter tower. There are moments where you see the realities of high-tech, low-life. And so it seems like it would lend itself very well to having a Cyberpunk Day experience here, but it'll probably, I'll probably need to trick a whole heck of a lot more people into helping me.
By tricky means inspire.
Oh yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Totally. All right,
I'll make
so
that joke.
are you guys doing the game again like you did last year, the live playthrough of the Cyberpunk inspired RPG?
So we are definitely hoping to make that happen. It is difficult to coordinate all the schedules. The plan currently is to, and I assume by the time people are listening to this on Thursday, the answer will be yes, of course, we got it, and awesome, and check the schedule, and you'll see it. But at the moment, we're still trying to move all of the pieces together to make sure that happens. It's Herculean effort to try to coordinate schedules.
So then this is where we remind everyone that cyberpunkday.com is the website to check up on everything.
That's the one. You can also find us on most of the social media. So just type in Cyberpunk Day and you can find us. But cyberpunkday.com is the place where you'll be able to find it. And it is also where on the day, it's where we are streamed. You can see us on Twitch also. But if you go to cyberpunkday.com and just hit play on the player, you'll be right there. If you can't make it on the day, we do upload everything to YouTube the following day. So if you can't catch it, or if you're in Australia and it's 2 a.m. for you, then you can definitely check out all of the content. Or if you just want to catch up on what we did last year in preparation for this year's Cyberpunk Day, go to YouTube and search for Cyberpunk Day. YouTube is not allowing me to change our URL, so I can't. We have the criteria met, but they're just not letting me do it. So for now, just you have to Google or type into the search bar Cyberpunk Day and you'll find us.
Oh, you have so much merch on this website I want to buy.
If he does that, I just want Miss Stabby to know to blame Matt and not me this time.
No,
Just going to put that out there.
She loves purple. I will only get probably a ½ inch of the blade.
Hold on, Matt. We're gonna put you on the solo screen. All right, show us that shirt. That glorious shirt.
Oh, there's stuff on the back. No way!
Oh, that is cool.
Yes, you got.
Yeah, so that's new. The T-shirt is new. And if speaking of inspiring, if you're looking to throw some support to indie creators who are spending huge amounts of time, trying to keep websites and YouTubes and all these things up and running, go buy some merch. It all just goes back into like domain names and all the other stuff that is involved with running a day.
Brother, I need a hoodie with that stuff on it.
Yes.
You're in California. It's like shorts weather all year round. What are you talking about?
Dude, we are in chili season. It's a brisk 72 degrees. Get off my back.
Preach.
All right. So this is the part of the wrap up. So first off, let me ask all of you listeners and viewers if you could hop over to wherever you can leave us comments. If there are any one of these questions that you would think make a good pull-out episode for a solo fireside chat, throw that in there. If you've got ideas inspired by this episode, throw that in there because we're always looking to mix it up. The plan for 2023 is a lot more fireside chats because they're fun instead of just solo interviews. But with that having been said, we're going to ask all of our guests where we can find them on the interweb so we can stalk them as you do. And as usual, it will be in the show notes. So Keith, you first. How can listeners find the one, the only Mr. Keith Hedger?
Go to keithhedger.com and all my links are somewhere on there. So you can email me. You can find all my social media stuff. That's the easiest place to sit, my centralized place for everyone to locate me from there.
Out freaking standing. All right, Miss Rachel Beck, the first lady of Cyberpunk.
You can find all my books at glitchlogs.com or on Amazon, and you can catch up with me on Twitter at Rachel the Beck.
Outstanding. All right, Mark Everglade, where can they find you online?
markeverglade.com. You can find my books, but also over 100 Cyberpunk book reviews, including reviews of a lot of the people on this call.
Outstanding. All right, Miss M.F. Lerma. It's been hard to call you that so people find what you're publishing under instead of the name I know you have. It made it a little awkward, but we're hoping they remember who you are to buy your stuff.
Think of something different,
yeah,
which is pretty cool. I would go by that.
Samuel Jackson does too.
I have been signing my books off with "You've reached the motherfucking end," and then
yes.
You know what? Nick, we have to come up with a new title for her. We've got the first lady of Cyberpunk. We need something for Molly. MF Lerma.
MF Lerma, first for name, writer of Cyberpunk, King of the Realm.
We'll work on it, people. If you got ideas, throw in the comments. All right.
I got half a bottle of whiskey to get through. I'll come up with something.
All right. How can listeners find you?
Yeah, if you follow me on Amazon under MF Lerma, there's that. I have jandchaney.com/Lerma, and that will take you to like all my instant release stuff. And then honestly, I'm really active in the Jay and Cheney Renegade Readers group. Like I talk to people, we go live sometimes. That's the most interactive place you'll find me.
Outstanding. All right, Mr. Matthew A, because the A is important. Goodwin.
Thudo World, THUTO World, everywhere on all of the things. I'm easy to track down and tell me how much you just love my books and are so inspired by them.
So you're going to be in trouble if you decide to branch out past Thudo World and write something else.
Yeah, this has not been lost on me. Not choosing to do MatthewAGoodwin.com has bit me many, many times, trying to teach people to pronounce it. Also, Thudo Co. is the name of the main bad guy corporation in my book. So there was a lot that as a novice author, I probably would go back and change. But that being said, you can find me at Thudo World on all of the things.
And what will it take to get Matthew A. Goodwin of Thudo World to eat a book on camera like your predecessor with Matthew Goodwin? Is that going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh, he's looking off to his wife. We're in trouble now.
Maybe,
he doesn't have permission.
Then it froze, which is hilarious.
When Into Neon becomes
I don't know if he did that on purpose. I know, but we'll take it. All right, Rosie Record. How can listeners and viewers find you on the interwebs?
RosieRecord.com. It's my website. It's got everything on it.
Outstanding. And last but not least, Mr. Jim Keen.
Same, jimkeen.com. I have 4 free novels on there for people to read, all of them cyberpunk, and over 100 pages of free content of designs and sketches and 3D models and stuff like that, of all the designs of the world in the books.
Cool. You can find us, dear listener. Hold on, I forgot. As usual, dear listener, your reviews matter, your thoughts matter, so please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part. And I hear for everyone that gets 100 reviews, the author in Cyberpunk world actually gets a cybernetic arm. So pretty soon, like if you just do your part, Keith is going to have like 27 arms, and Rosie's going to be like fighting as they chase her because she's going to say no. But yeah, do your part, people, and leave reviews. So
I would like to see again.
Yeah, that would be nice. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook where all the shenanigans happen over at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. We do have a Facebook page in addition to the group, but it has gobbledygook as an address, so you should look for it, follow it, and then we can give it a dedicated URL, people. You can do your part. We'd appreciate that. We have a website at anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. Or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly caffeinated. They will drink until we have to print them a new liver. See what I did there, Nick?
Yes.
All right. So we want to thank you for spending.
You don't need to print
So you just need the nanites. All right.
So
thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. I appreciate each and every one of you stopping by.
stay classy, San Diego.